what we have here is a Homestead. 52-inch, 6-blade only Homestead. Kind of looks like a Superfan 4, except it's not. Now this one's a Superfan. Yes, a Homestead Superfan. If we turn the housing, see the old logo up in here. You see it has that nice floppy 10-spoke flywheel. Yeah, it's a 10-spoke flywheel. Okay. These rubber flywheels, these 10-spoke rubber flywheels, were a copy of Casablanca's design. Casablanca had a, I think they call it Safe Flex, or something like that. They had a flywheel with very floppy rubber from 1980 to 1983. Homestead's flywheels were originally metal, which was good for durability but bad for vibration and noise, so they went to rubber. I want to say in 83 and 84, I want to say are when they had this flywheel. Could be a little off, but after this one, they changed to a different 4-spoke design, well, 8 actual spokes with a bit of filler between them to make basically 4 units, right? Those flywheels suck. I mean, they are some of the shittiest flywheels I have ever seen, right? I mean, they're bad. Like, they have a tendency to harden up and break, and they have a tendency to just dust themselves in the box over the years. Like, the rubber just breaks down so easily. And I hate it. This is an earlier Superfan, probably from 1984, which has that nice floppy flywheel. And in here, this is the control, has an inner knob and an outer knob. The inner knob is the power switch, okay, which not only controls the power but also the light. The outer knob is for the fan. So, yeah, it's a weird variable. It's a 2-knob control. So, what is it about the Superfan that makes it so rare? 2 things. One, the flywheel issue I just mentioned. Most of these flywheels just break over time. And 2, the Homestead Superfan is a DC fan. Before DC, it was basically the hipster DC fan. This was before DC technology really took off. It was way ahead of its time, probably by about 25 years ahead of its time. Okay. What it has in it is a GE stack motor. It is a brushless DC stack motor. Okay. Very similar, or pretty much exactly like what's available in all the DC fans today. Right? Yeah, this was an early attempt at it. The theory was, yes, you would have a more efficient fan, and you do. Right? And the problem with Superfan was it was not the motor, but the driver board, or, you know, basically the circuit board driving it. Okay? They weren't that great. The technology was... the boards were crap. They just didn't last. So with the combination of the flywheel and the board and control, just the early, you know, electronic technology, these things had an extremely high failure rate, and thus you just don't see them. And when they were new, they were very expensive, because this was the hot new tech. So not many of them were probably sold to begin with. And even if they were sold in droves, again, you had the issues with the, I don't know, reliability. And up here you see the canopy above. Yeah, the motor's sealed. So, if you're seeing a Homestead and you see it with a sealed end bell, yeah, that's Superfan. All the other motors that Homestead used, whether it be contrast or if it was the comfort flow, they were vented. So that was something weird. So anyway, let's see how this thing does. See here on the control, right? Just focus on that. You have to turn the knob at least a little bit. You can see it twitching. Kind of does that because it doesn't really know what it wants to do yet. See, early DC fans of the early 2010s, late 2000s, they twitch. So what I have to do is I have to turn the fan knob up just a little bit more. Another thing, you see the flywheel jiggling? That's why a lot of these failed. If you had a compromised flywheel, let's turn up just another notch. There we go. Yeah, if you had a compromised flywheel, right, that twitching would kill it. So I'd have it on its lowest setting right now. Hopefully it doesn't stall out on me. Now the only thing about this flywheel is it's warped. The flywheel is warped, a couple of the blades are warped. You know, it's just, you know, kind of wonky. Put up just a notch. There we go. The variable speed knob is sensitive. For whatever reason. You know. Superfan is such a weird system. So weird. And it lasted into the early 90s, too. So they were available for a long time. It's just the reliability was shit. You know? So they just didn't last. There are flies in here which I need to kill, but that's for another time. Yeah, so I mean, it's a shame because these things are dead ass silent. No buzz, nothing. Now, when they introduced the newer flywheel, the shitty one that breaks all the time, they made it with symmetrical screws. So it would be 4 or 6 blade compatibility. The early ones were only 6 blade with offsets, with asymmetrical screw holes. This one, again, is 6 blade only because it has that good rubber flywheel. The metal flywheels previously for the Superfan 3s and 4s, or at least the 3s, they were the same way. And what I find interesting about the 6 blade irons is it looked like they were really designed for 4 blades on a smaller flywheel, but then I guess they changed their mind but didn't want to change the design of the iron, so they just stuck with it until about 85 when they switched to the symmetrical pattern. I could be wrong about that date. Someone correct me if I am wrong. So anyway, let's turn it up just another smidge. And the fan's reversible by what you do is you turn the outer fan knob, you turn it off and then back on real fast, and that reverses it. It's such a weird fan. Finding a working Superfan, though, is not something you see often. Because if you do find one, chances are it doesn't work. And God help you if you don't have the control. Because you can't really run it without its control. You really can't. Now, what I want to do, if I happen to find a dead Superfan, I want to see if I can get a modern driver or a modern receiver from, say, a Fanimation or any of the other DC fans out there to work with this motor. Because there has to be a better driver out there. Has to be. Just a matter of finding it. But because Superfans are so rare, and if they don't work, they usually get trashed. Good luck with that. It's just... So, let's turn up just another notch. Basically, I saw a marketplace listing for a couple of White Four Seasons and a Union Regent, which was a Panama knockoff. Alright, now that's on medium right now. Okay. I thought I was just seeing 3 fans. Then, before I got there, they were like, oh yeah, we have a 4th fan. I'm like, okay, I'll go for it, whatever. I had no idea what the 4th fan was going to be. I figured, oh, another 4 Seasons, another Regent, oh, another piece of crap. I thought it was going to be nothing. But then I walk into the living room, where the whole house is being gutted, right? I walk into the living room, and I see a Homestead. I'm like, oh, that's different. And then I see the top of the motor, and immediately, I knew this was something different. I knew it was a Superfan. Just something was a little off. Then, of course, I checked the label. It said Superfan. I'm like, oh, good. What a surprise. It really was. And then I was like, where's the control? And sure enough, it was still in the wall. They hadn't removed it yet. They took the buttons and faceplate off. God damn it. But, hey, I'm not going to complain because the control's here. You know? And this thing still works. Now, as I mentioned with the twitchy flywheel, with the twitching with the motor, all DC fans kind of do that a little bit. Right? Some have it controlled a little better than others. It really depends on the driver with the fan. Like Fanimation's 31-speed system, or variable speed system, really, okay, does it best. It doesn't really twitch too much. The older driver system, the 6-speed remote, that one actually does twitch quite a bit. You know, so it really depends on the drivers. But that twitching wreaks havoc on flywheels. But with this floppy rubber, it's not so bad. And that's the only reason this fan's still running. I mean, oh yeah, sure, I could replace the flywheel, but and I probably really should because of how warped the friggin' thing is, but it's still intact. So, looks like ass, but I'm going to stick with it for now. Let's turn up just another wee smidge. Yeah, you have to be really... the control's really sensitive for whatever reason. Of course, it has wobble, because why wouldn't it? So you have to really be touchy. Oh yeah, that's right, it's not in the cradle. There we go. Of course, not in the notch. This is kind of a medium high. Now I might as well just go to straight high. It wobbles, probably because of the warping of the flywheel. Warped blades, that'll do it. Thing is dead silent. I mean, you don't hear it buzz. You might hear it shaking on the ceiling because of the aforementioned wobble, but it doesn't buzz. Now the fan had a 36-inch downrod when I got it. It was in the living room, which had a high-pitched ceiling. Really nice install. Smells of tobacco, you know. Good old nostalgia. So, right. Now I'm gonna let it coast. You just turn off the light/power knob in order to get it to do that. In order to turn it off, just turn off the power/light knob. Really wish I had a light to put on this thing, but it is what it is. Homestead later introduced Homestar, which was a contrast slash top union system, which was used amongst Newtones, Sierras, Design House, and Homestead. Possibly another one, but at least those ones. It was similar to IntelliTouch, had a few more features than IntelliTouch, easier to use than IntelliTouch. Similarly crappy reliability, but I mean Casablanca's own IntelliTouch has a relatively high failure rate as well, so it's like, par for the course. So now we're going to turn it back on, and we're going to reverse. Now we're going to see it spool up. See, what I did is I turned the fan knob all the way down and all the way up again, and that caused it to reverse. And for whatever reason, it does not wobble as much in reverse. Very interesting. And of course, dead silent. That's one of the nice things about DC fans. They're silent. Now today, DC is all the rage. Like, almost all new fans coming out now are DC. Fanimation's doing it heavily. Hinckley's doing it heavily. I mean, Monte Carlo's doing it pretty heavily. Quorum's starting to do it more, although they've been clinging on to AC fans because they're more traditional, more conservative. I mean, they are out of Texas, for God's freaking sake, but yeah. All the main manufacturers, except for maybe Hunter and Casablanca, are really starting to do DC. Because Hunter is, well, Casablanca is pretty much on its last legs. Because again, any time now, I'm sure Hunter's just going to kill the name and just make everything Hunter. Because why not? Because it's already dead anyway. It's just alive by name. But it's hilarious though, because I mean, Homestead was doing this in the early to mid 80s with DC. And companies really only started experimenting with DC in late 2008. 2009, 2010. And now, almost everything's DC, so I just wish the driver boards were more reliable. Because these are decent fans. I mean, okay, the brass. Homestead's brass is terrible. You have to clear coat it to keep it from tarnishing or rusting. It's just a thing you have to do with these. But aside from that, good quality. Very, very good quality. Let's turn the fan down a notch. Now, Homestead made a Coventry, which was their Victorian knockoff. This was available in Comfort Flow and Superfan, I think maybe also in Homestar. Not really sure. Turn the knob the wrong way. But yeah, you can get this thing down to a nice aesthetic low. The manual says 30 to 200 RPM range. Fully variable. I might as well just turn it off. The model is HP 4000, not HP 40, like your typical Superfan 4000. See, basically, Homestead took like the normal original numbering or model number code, and they just added a bunch of zeros to indicate that it was something different. Later models, or SF 4000 or whatever. Turn that phone off. There we go. But, yeah. So, there you have it. A Homestead Superfan from 1984.